Hi there, this is Mr. Evans, and this video is looking at the place element of the marketing mix. So we are just here in the specification. And what is place? So as with all of these components of the marketing mix, it's really important to remember that the business is trying to create a brand image with its marketing mix, and for that brand image to be coherent and successful and to have an integrated marketing mix, all of the elements of the marketing mix need to work together. So the place component is that part of the marketing mix which is concerned with getting the product from the producer to the customer. And it's also concerned with the physical location of the business. We might also talk about the distribution channel, how the product is conveyed from the producer to its final user. So I'm going to start off by looking at different distribution channels. The first distribution channel is sometimes known as the traditional method of distribution. This was the preferred method before the emergence of the big supermarkets, where you would have several steps between the producer and the final consumer. Producers would produce in large quantities and they would sell on to wholesalers who would perform a task called break in bulk. They buy large quantities of products direct from the manufacturers and they would sell them on in smaller quantities, so to retailers. And when we're talking about retailers, we're talking about not the big Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Asda's that we see today. It's, talking maybe 50, 75 years ago, where there was lots of smaller businesses, smaller shops, corner shops, etc., that would they wouldn't require huge amounts of products. They wouldn't want to buy directly off the producer. The producer wouldn't want to sell directly to the retailer, serving thousands of businesses. The wholesaler performed a role which was buying in bulk from the producer, and small retailers could come and buy in slightly smaller quantities that were more appropriate for them from the wholesaler, and then the product would be passed on to the customer from there. So examples of this is what a wholesaler might look like, sort of very different to our kind of consumer orientated retailers that we know. Okay, usually warehouse type businesses, large amounts of products stacked up and products for sale by the box. You can see these big boxes of crisps here. And Macro is an example of a retailer in the wholesaler, in the UK. A retailer is an organisation that sells relatively small quantities of products to the final consumer. And in the last sort of 30, 40 years, the emergence of the big supermarkets sell in such huge quantities that they now perform their own wholesaler role. There's no need for the wholesaler anymore when you're dealing with a Sainsbury's or a Tesco. They have their own distribution centres where the producers can sell. Heinz might sell huge quantities of baked beans to a Sainsbury's distribution centre, and then that distribution centre would play the role of the wholesaler breaking down in bulk and selling out to the individual Sainsbury's stores. The advantage, of course, is that at each layer or each point in the distribution channel, the intermediaries are adding price, adding to the cost of the final product. The more people it goes through, the more intermediaries there are, the more people trying to make money off a product, the more it's going to cost the final consumer. So this retailer method of distribution, a more modern method of distribution, makes the product cheaper for the final consumer because it's going through fewer stages. And here are some examples of retailers. Direct selling is when the manufacturer sells products directly to the final consumer. So that's useful for the customer because the profit margin that needs to be earned on that product is that of the producer. And Dell are a good example of a company that they may well sell through PC World, I'm not sure, but certainly you can go directly to Dell, build your own PC, and they send it to you, and there's no intermediary there. You're buying directly off the manufacturer. Okay, when you're looking at those different distribution channels, it's worth just thinking about the distance from the manufacturer to the final consumer, in terms of customer service and things like that, and being responsive to customer needs. The closer the producer is to the final customer, the more they're going to understand the final customer and their needs, and so you can also analyse that aspect of the distribution channel. Multi-channel distribution is on the specification, sometimes called omni-channel distribution, where a manufacturer sells products directly to the final. That's the incorrect definition. A better definition would be multi-channel distribution. When a manufacturer uses a range of methods of distribution. So, for example, Next, you can buy from the shop. They've got a catalogue still. There's an app that you can use to shop, and they of course have a website as well. So multi-channel distribution is where the manufacturer uses a range of different methods of distribution, trying to attract as many different types of customers as possible. So what factors affect the decision in terms of place? Well, the target market. Of course, it's important to be close to the target market, geographically speaking, especially if this isn't a product that can be easily sold over the internet, or if your consumers aren't comfortable using the internet, then you would want to be close to the final consumer. If your customers are happy to use the internet, then you may be able to set up in a cheap location in a warehouse or something, and then distribute the products directly to the consumers yourself. The nature of the product, is it perishable? If you've got a good that's going to go off, it's going to be important to have as shorter distribution channel as possible, so you're selling directly to the final consumer as quickly as possible. Or is the product digitizable? So Amazon are a book publisher these days, and they can just send them their books over the internet to Kindles. So that's an example of a direct method of distribution. Brand image and the other elements of the marketing mix. So this is particularly so in when you've got a shop location, perhaps. Okay, so if you have a look at some of those high-end kind of fashion retailers, Kurt Geiger maybe, or Mulberry have got stores in London. Go and have a look at those stores and see how they fit in with the rest of those companies' marketing mix. They don't have tons and tons of products on sale like you might see in a supermarket. Okay, it's far more exclusive than that, and this is the place reflecting the other element of the marketing mix of a premium price and the well-designed products, etc. The cost of the distribution channel will have an impact on the business. An expensive distribution method or an expensive location will increase the selling price or reduce the profit margin. And the actual business's competitors can have an impact as well. Businesses can choose to be close to or far away from competitors. It's perhaps understandable why businesses want to be far away from their competitors. That can be a source of differentiation and USP. If you're the only supermarket in a 10-mile radius, then that's going to be useful for you as a USP. Why might businesses choose to be close to their competitors? Well, if you think about restaurants or high streets, these places attract consumers because there are a range of choices of business. So it may actually be beneficial for businesses to huddle together. You also often see, particularly in big cities like Birmingham, there's a jewellery quarter, I believe. In London, there's kind of Savile Row where a lot of the tailors are. So people go to those specific areas if they want a product. And I lived very close to a street in London called Bermondsey Street, which was home to a lot of really quite high-end restaurants, but they all located near each other, and it created a kind of buzz for the area that would attract consumers to that place. So it actually made sense for the businesses to be close to their competitors. So key thing to remember, as usual, any element of the marketing mix, the most important thing is that the element of the marketing mix, in this case place, reflects the other element of the marketing mix.